Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. This is our 17th episode of doing this nonsense, and today we're going to talk about the Hobbit Trilogy, as we talked about the Lord of the Rings trilogy last week. So, first off, general impressions of the Hobbit Trilogy.
I mean, it's obviously not as good as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and just not as good in general. There's stuff I like, which I feel like the only thing that really saves this trilogy for me, like a complete dumpster fire. So I guess mixed, to put it,
Yes.
simply.
Very, very mixed. I would say definitely structure, length, and the runtime for all these movies are big problems, as we'll go into later. But as Craig was telling me earlier, we first have to talk about the backs, the how the movie came to be, the background info, because this movie actually went through a lot of nonsense to get to the final product. And as we know, I just hit the microphone. As we know, Guillermo del Toro was going to direct an adaptation, and originally it's supposed to be two movies. It was going to be produced by Peter Jackson, and it said that Del Toro spent nearly or almost 2 years of pre-production or just working on production for the movie with Jackson. But at the time, this is like 2010. MGM was having a lot of financial issues. Like some of the James Bond movies, that's what delayed Skyfall, for reference, for so long, was because of that. And Del Toro left because of MGM, and Jackson was pretty much announced as the director, and they did not give him any extra time to fix anything or change anything. And then they just stretched the two movies into three. And, Jackson would later say that everything was just unprepared because he couldn't get back that time that was allotted for Del Toro in production. So to say it's Jackson's fault entirely for this messy trilogy is disingenuous. It is, I guess he did the best he could with what was given to him, right?
Yeah, because like I actually have watched some of the behind the scenes for the Hobbit trilogy, and I guess the common theme you would say is that they're always talking about how they really don't have a schedule what they're doing. They're not entirely sure what they're doing. Because like there are scenes where like pretty famously, I guess, when he was filming the scenes with Smaug, how he would just be sitting there like on the set, just like thinking, giving everyone like an extended lunch because he was just trying to think about how he could fit everything together. Because like they didn't have any storyboards, the scripts weren't finished. Like they were doing everything on the fly, kind of.
Right. And I have a quote I wrote down from Jackson where he says, "You're going to a set, or going onto a set, and you're winging it. You've got these massively complicated scenes, no storyboards, and you're making up there and then on the spot." And that just sounds like a nightmare. Just having all these people not knowing what they're doing on a set where you're already there for such a long time, and you're just unprepared, and that is just such a big nightmare, and a
It
costly
costs a lot of
nightmare
money.
too. Yeah, very costly nightmare.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's important because people like to simply put the blame of the Hobbit trilogy on like just Jackson. Or like, they try to put on one person when I feel like it's a lot of issues, like the studios mismanaging things and running out of money, then giving Jackson no time to really create his movies. Although he's at fault, it was his idea for the third movie, but that you can't blame him for.
That was my biggest gripe with the trilogy was the third movie was unnecessary. They could have easily done two coherent movies, and because you saw that they were very much stretching it because it's only one book. They're stretching into three movies. Two's fine, but
Actually, I would disagree with you. I would say the second movie is the most unnecessary of the trilogy in terms of I felt like that one they were definitely stretching things out. Even like it's a common problem in all the movies that it just feels bloated. Everything is stretched out, but
well,
especially in the second one, it felt that.
I no, I was just saying in general, having a third
Oh,
movie in
oh,
the
oh, yeah.
series I wasn't saying one was better than the other.
Oh,
I was
oh,
saying that because they could have easily combined, taken out one of the three movies and then divided up into the two.
oh, 100%.
It
Well,
would
it's
have
funny
been
you
much
mentioned that
better.
Because I think Del Toro's vision of the movie it was gonna be two movies, but like he said, like he wanted the first one to basically be pretty much the entire Hobbit, and the second movie would be kind of like the ending to the Hobbit, and like I guess tying into Lord of the Rings, whatever that means. I think Jackson wanted something similar. He wanted to kind of like split it right in half and try to tie into Lord of the Rings. And then they said, then oh, let's add a third one and just throw whoever we can left in there.
Yeah. Because you could have like started out like if you were to do the two movies, it could have ended like he meets with Smog, and then its tail ends into Smog's desolation of the town, and then the Battle of Five Armies and conclude it. Like you didn't need, even though I didn't mind when they were in the caves and like that was a cool scene like where they're escaping. Um, but then actually no, the scene I guess one of the more unnecessary scenes was like when they were trapped by Azog. Um, and they were like on the trees and they had to call for the eagles. But we'll,
I
we'll
see.
get into that. I
Yeah,
don't I
because
don't mean
Yeah,
to like
we'll get into the
yeah.
differences between the source material and the books, or the books and the movie. So I guess let's just, for time's sake, let's just go right into the Unexpected Journey, which is the first one. It came out in 2012, and I remember being excited about seeing this movie, only to walk out a little disappointed. I think the biggest problem this movie has is that there's three openings to it. There's the prologue, showing Smog and whatnot. There's old Bilbo and Frodo talking, which takes place right before the Fellowship of the Ring. And then there's introducing young Bilbo and all the 13 dwarves. And I wrote down specifically, it takes 40 minutes for Bilbo to begin his quest out of a 169-minute movie.
Yeah, and like I guess to like tie it into like the like the source material in the actual book, I guess you probably could have followed the book's intro more closely than what they did because you didn't because the book I know it just opens up with Bilbo in the Shire. I don't think you needed like I think like the Smog back lore and like him desolating the dwarves that could have been more like explained as they were going on the journey. I don't.
Yeah.
I guess more. I guess you could have, or if you wanted to have that to like get people who haven't read the books into it, but you don't need old Bilbo and Frodo to talk. You could have done Smog and then introduced Bilbo right away. I think the unnecessary part was old Bilbo and Frodo talking.
okay,
But
that's tied into Lord of the Rings, but I didn't really, I don't know, I guess I didn't really feel that was necessary. Like, it's Bilbo, it's the same set and
yeah,
everything.
yeah, because the book literally starts out with just describing Bilbo and like him like how going through his day, like enjoying his second breakfast and stuff like that.
Yeah, then he
Um,
meets Gandalf.
yeah, it gets right into it. It doesn't do any of that back lore.
Actually, I would say I might prefer it starting with old Bilbo and Frodo, only because they pretty much reiterate the prologue again in the movie. So it's derivative the second time. They could have just kept it later on when the dwarves are explaining what happens. Because if you want to tie it in nicely to the Fellowship of the Ring, it's starting with old Bilbo and Frodo. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind it. Because then you don't have this extra time that is spent for the prologue, and that's just having already too many openings.
Plus, I feel like it's a good way to frame it too. Like, this is Bilbo telling his adventure, old Bilbo, like recounting on the adventure. So that's why I didn't really mind this much either. Like, I feel like it makes sense for him to, this is him writing his story finally.
And it was nice to see Frodo again.
Yes,
I'm
before
not
he
too
was
I'm not too big
destroyed.
on nostalgia, but it was nice to see like
Yeah,
right before the start of the Fellowship of the Ring.
yeah. No, I didn't mind any of it. I'm just saying, like for timing's sake, or like if you need to cut stuff out,
I would
like
have
because
taken out
obviously,
Smog
I,
destroying
yeah,
Aragorn.
yeah, because
'Cause I
that's
feel like,
something you could explain later on, like or as the journey's going along. Like you could
or
have
like
those
when they
tender
meet to,
moments.
or when the dwarves meet him, like they could say, "Why are you going on this journey?" Oh, because Smaug destroyed. The Smaug has our home.
Yeah,
That would make sense because he's introducing to the
yeah.
audience and to Bilbo what's happening, what happened.
Yeah, you don't need to show Smog desolating them and driving them out.
And this is a little error I'm sure you guys noticed, but in the start of this movie, Smog has two legs and two arms, but then this in the rest of the movies, like the second and third one, he doesn't have arms. His arms are attached to his wings.
Well, that I guess it's technically an error, but I think they said they had not finished his design yet. so,
But isn't
so
that design more accurate to the book? With him
it
being
is
on his
actually.
limbs, like having front limbs.
Yeah, and like the wings, like because they were trying to say
Yeah,
like it wasn't as realistic for him to have like essentially like the arms and the wings.
He's a
And I
dragon.
was like, yeah, but like that's what I was saying too. Like it's a dragon. Like they said, his fire is like fuel based. It's not going to appear magically, but like it's a dragon. Like what are you thinking?
yeah.
Was
Like you
that
don't have to
Peter?
get you don't have to get like that technical on like a, a
Yeah, no
fantasy
one's going to be
character.
like,
Yeah,
how does this fire work? I
Was that
mean,
Peter Jackson's idea? His
I do
logic?
not remember. It was either Peter Jackson or somebody made the decision, or maybe it was he handed off to like the Weta design team and it's like whatever, just make the dragon.
yeah,
'Cause I remember. I mean, I never read the book, but I have seen some of the cover art for the book, and one of them is Smog laying in all the gold.
Yeah, talking to Bilbo.
No, I don't think it was him talking to Bilbo, but it was just him. You could clearly see like a red dragon with the front legs and front arms and back legs.
yeah. He also wasn't as big.
Yeah. Because, like, again,
The
these were based off dragons like that, a human could slay, like in the ancient, fairy tale stories. And, that Smaug's way too big for a human to slay.
Isn't this Smog like the size of a 747 airplane?
Yeah, it's huge. Because, like, there are dragons in, obviously the lore of Lord of the Middle Earth,
yeah,
which is not that important, but point is, like, humans and dwarves have killed dragons before. So,
yeah,
I feel like it's really not realistic for a human to, like, 1v1 a dragon, at least
yeah.
the
Like
Smaug size.
the biggest ones were like in like the beginning, like when there was more like they were fighting, like, with like the Maiar and Valor, like
Even then, like
not
Turin, he killed I forget what the dragon's name was, and not in Caligon. So it's whatever. Turin, like when he killed the dragon, like he stabbed it in the stomach with a spear. I mean, a human could have killed. Like you can't do that with Smaug. He's way too big.
yeah. But
That's
I
one of
will
the
say,
things.
just for for even the sake of the first one, like, or even for the whole series, I still think they cast it pretty well.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they.
yeah,
I thought Bilbo was great.
yeah. Martin Freeman,
The,
he played that role. He
the
played the
one
role
thing that
perfectly.
is pretty strange about these movies, though, is that they don't spend a lot of time with Bilbo and the dwarves. Bilbo sometimes gets outshined, and they kind of put him like they tuck him away. It feels like sometimes in the movie for Gandalf. Did you guys
Yeah,
get that feeling too? Like he's Bilbo kind of gets sidelined sometimes.
well, because I feel like it's similar to Lord of the Rings, where like the beginning of the Hobbit is kind of like useless in a way. He's kind of has to develop his courage and his usefulness as the journey goes on. That's kind of what happens in the book too.
Oh, he gets sidelined in the book.
Well, it was more of like
Sidelined, but
it's just like he was out of his element. So at first, there's really not much he can do. Like when they're journeying and stuff, and they're on the mountain, they deal with the trolls and stuff. Like he really, there wasn't much he could do. It was much more up to the dwarves and Gandalf to handle the situations. Like, um, like Bilbo's bigger moments. Obviously in the movies and in the books, they at least did that was with like Gollum and stuff
yeah,
and
gone like
Smaug.
the spiders too,
Yeah,
Mirkwood.
yeah, like those were his more of his moments, but like in the initial part of the journey, he kind of really didn't do much.
Huh.
Because like I guess I don't want to skip too far ahead, but like with the
Then don't.
trolls, uh,
Oh, we're still talking about this movie.
Yeah, we're still talking about the
yeah,
first one.
yeah. So like with the trolls, the difference between the movie and the book, the trolls actually, I think Bilbo gets knocked out in that fight. They capture all the dwarves, and then Gandalf actually, like in the movie, he defeats them, but it wasn't. He didn't split the stone. What he did was he hid in the shadows and was mimicking each of their voices because there was three trolls. I forgot their names. It was like Tim.
It was
They're pretty like
Bert and Ernie, and they talked in the Cockney accent.
yeah. They're it's pretty funny.
Bert and
Um,
Ernie, really?
I forget that. Yeah, Bert,
there
Ernie. I
was
forget the
three of
third
them.
one.
Yeah, I think it was Tim, something like that.
Oh,
Um,
Tom. Bert,
Tom, that's
Ernie,
what it
and
was.
Tom.
Yeah, those are their names. And so like they were talking. how they were gonna like eat them and stuff. And then so Gandalf hid in the shadows and he was mimicking their voices to confuse them. So they started arguing amongst themselves, and he kept doing that until the sun came up, and then they just turned to stone. Like he didn't split the stone and like ever reveal himself. He just stayed in the shadows and was mimicking their voices to confuse them.
How long was he doing that for in the book?
I don't know if it specified the exact amount of time, but it was long enough for the sun to come up and then for them to turn to stone. Like that part they did get right of them turning to stone, but
And it matches the
I think
exact pose in Lord of the Rings when you see the trolls.
yeah, but I don't think that Bilbo. I think Bilbo got knocked out in that fight, or like he hid. He didn't have like a heroic moment, or he tried, but he got like he got knocked out. I think,
It was
right?
Gandalf who saved the day.
Yeah, and then they actually ransacked the trolls. They went into like their cave, like where they were hiding, and then that's where I think that's where they got like their they got like weapons and stuff was from the trolls. I think that's where they found
Yeah,
is that where they
Gladden and
found
Sting
yeah, that's where they found Sting was
and the
the
fortress.
trolls loot. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I do know for a fact that Azog is not in the movie.
He's actually
At least
dead.
from book to movie adaptation, he's just added in there
So I
for
guess
whatever
Yeah.
reason. I don't know.
And also too well, the one I will give them credit, the one thing they did get pretty um almost ripped out or actually was ripped out of the book was the song the dwarves sang. That actually was written in the book.
it's what
Oh,
Bill Baggins hates.
I'm so glad that
Yeah.
they added a song and got everything else wrong. I'm so glad for that.
But yeah, like the Misty Mountain song that was in there. And
Oh, because
then
I know you mentioned go back to Azog real quick, how he was not in the book. Yeah, because they talked about the Battle of Azen Ulbazar, the War of the dwarves and orcs. During that battle, yeah, Thorin does because like a Thorin Oakenshield that he uses that oak branch, but also he is not the one who kills Azog. I think that was Dane Ironfoot, his cousin.
yeah.
Oh.
And
And then
Bolg was Azog's son who won revenge, but he doesn't really appear until the end of end of the book. Like they aren't being chased by orcs at all.
yeah. And
So
then
maybe they did that to add, like, I don't know, tension, where
But I feel like
they're on the run. But you don't really need to do that though.
that's what I was gonna say. Because like they like every like almost every stop they make, there's usually some kind of peril. So there's no reason to have like this, ever present like threat chasing them when everything they counter is perilous.
And also, they're essentially going on one massive suicide mission, where they're trying to defeat a dragon and take all the loot. It's a big suicide mission.
Well, I guess they say they want to take the Arkenstone, but yeah. But then again, like it was just 13 of them. 13 of them probably could take on a dragon, but
Well,
in
I'm
this kind of
talking,
dragon
yeah,
they
in the
couldn't.
movie, yeah, they definitely couldn't. Because I guess I forgot you said how Smog isn't nearly as big in the movies as he is in the book.
no, it's flipped. He's
Yeah, that's what I meant. You know what I mean?
no,
Do
I
we?
don't. Our 10 viewers might not.
Yeah, that's right.
I also know too, like when I mean it's just a little side note, like it's not really important how, but like Bilbo, um, and like when he first joined the journey, like he woke up, like he slept in, and then like all the dwarves were gone, but they left him a note saying, like they were waiting for him at this inn, so like it wasn't,
It was like Bilbo was like they didn't just abandon him.
yeah, like yeah, it wasn't like he like what was it he in the movie,
I think it was what was it the Green Dragon where like Merry and Pippin were dancing the first one.
mhm.
Oh, I
But
did like the scene where he goes on an adventure. I thought that was probably the best scene of the movie for me. Him running through the
I,
Shire to catch up with
yeah,
the dwarves.
I said one of my
yeah,
favorite scenes was before that where Gandalf's trying to convince him and he's saying like the rule's not in your books. It's out there. And see the ominous shot of the window trying to convince him. And he
I
tells the story of how they discovered
yeah.
golf.
Well, that like that's what like Craig, like you were saying, like I mean, this trilogy has plenty of problems, and stuff, and obviously with the behind the scenes stuff. But like there were like those moments, like those small tender moments, like where the movie still had a heart and stuff that were redeemable, in my eyes, that carried it. Especially like the part where Bilbo shows up after they all escape the caves, and like Thorn's like, what, why did you come back? And then Bilbo gives the heartfelt speech of like, I have a home and everything, you guys don't, but I'll help you if I can. Like you see like the heart of his character.
It seems to really, I guess, show Bilbo's, good naturedness and just also of hobbits in general.
Yeah, and
So again,
also
like
too. Yeah. Oh,
oh,
go
you
ahead.
go, you go.
Well, I was just gonna say too, the dwarves, especially like how they worked so well together, like in their action scenes, like those were redeemable too. Like especially like when they're escaping the cave goblins, and like or Gandalf like kicks out the rock and they're just following it, or like using ladders to fight and stuff. Like how resourceful they were. Like those scenes, like they made it fun, and like it was definitely like they were able to highlight, no, not highlight, but overshadow some of the problems for me. But
Well, also, something I did like, which I'm not sure is as well like, but I liked how they made the dwarves a little more distinct. I mean, I know they had some goofy beards and stuff, but at least I like they tried to make an effort to make them distinguishable because I feel like most people would make them like identical and you couldn't tell the difference between them. Like, I mean, I guess not everyone knows their names, but that's that dwarf because they look very distinct as opposed to just like, one just dwarf or a group of like the
especially
exact same.
especially when their names are all so similar, Balin, Dwalin, and
Or like Dory, Ori, Nori. I mean, most
yeah,
people don't know which one is which, but I feel like at least visually you can tell which one's which.
was it Keely and Philly?
Yeah, because that's the thing too. Like Thorin didn't have a big beard. That's not as he's supposed to have a big beard. He's also the oldest one too, actually.
And also in the books, Thorn was much more reasonable. Like than I wouldn't. He was more reasonable. And like in the movie, the movie they made him kind of brash and like, kind of stuck in his ways at times. But
Yeah, like, I guess add some drama. Like again, like the drama of like Azog trying to hunt him down, like end the line of Durin, which again didn't happen in the book. Like we said, it's not really necessary.
well, like, but like that's what I mean. Like that one scene, like where Azog has them trapped on the trees and they're all like on fire, um, and then the eagles show up to get them out of it. I'm like, you don't really need that scene. Um, the cave scene was fun, especially after like they just had like the long cave scene. Like I don't think you needed that scene.
No, but
Like
that
them
scene
to
was in the book, right? I mean, that was when it wasn't Azog, but it was like the orcs of the Misty Mountains came out,
Well,
right?
I meant more of like
That's when they got
Azog
rescued
being
by the
there.
yeah. Again, like because I guess Colin, I don't know if you know, but the Battle of the Five Armies, one of the armies is the orcs from the Misty Mountains, not Sauron.
In the book?
Yeah, and they're the ones who attacked them at the trees, and they got rescued by the eagles. And they're the ones that show up to get revenge against the orcs against the dwarves at the Battle of the Five Armies.
I did not know that.
Yeah, just figured, because like I said, that kind of did happen in the books. It just obviously wasn't Azog and his pack of orcs from Sauron. It was the orcs in the Misty Mountains.
Huh.
Another inaccuracy. Yeah, but it seems like that didn't bother me though. I guess but I just think, like they're trying to make it personal, which like Azog, just didn't really work for me.
No, that's what I meant with that scene. Like the Azog, like him and Thorin, like that was unnecessary. Like obviously them escaping by that way was fine because it was in the books, but like just the unnecessary like tension between him and Azog in that
Yeah,
scene.
it's like this huge rivalry, even though this is like the second time they've met.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for our 10 viewers.
Yeah, they're trying to make the personal like I'm gonna wipe out the line of Dora and I'm gonna kill Thor, and it's like this is the second. I think the second time you guys have met.
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, he's like they're like that's what like with that scene, like he's like taunting him and stuff, and like it's just like you don't need that. Like the scene itself is enough. Like them escaping by the Eagles is cool and everything. It's like you just don't need that like unnecessary drama.
Because again, like like they just escaped the Misty Mountains, but again, like their journey is perilous. Like they still didn't escape the orcs of the Misty Mountains. That's why you don't need them like as ever present threat. 'Cause, like mostly where they go, they face trouble. We mentioned before.
Yeah. I think what was it was it the stone giant scene?
Yeah, like how they were really weren't like actual, like they were literally made of stone. It was more of the fact that's what they were called.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're playing soccer, right? I mean,
Yeah. What was it? Well, they were in Rivendell much longer than the books or the movie. I think showed.
yeah, they did it for both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where I guess their extended stays they kind of cut short because like go back to Lord of the Rings real quick. They were in Lorien for like a month. I forget how long they were in Rivendell for
I
The
think I
Hobbit.
think Rivendell they were a couple weeks. Like I think it was like 21 days or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. They were there for
Yeah,
like almost a month. Like,
you had to get information, rest, get resources to continue the journey.
but I know Elrond did decipher the map for them and everything.
I say I think it's Elrond, but I think he's the only character to appear in like most of the Middle Earth books. I mean, I think he appeared in Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion. I think the Unfinished Tales. I think he's the only character to appear in all of them. Just a little fun fact. But speaking, there's another character that they introduced to this movie who was not in any of the Hobbit book. It was
Radagast.
Radagast.
Yeah.
Yes. Who I guess I didn't entirely like the interpretation of him. I guess as for the movie, I guess it's fine, but I feel like it just didn't really fit a wizard.
Especially when you make, I think it also doesn't fit, especially when you make Gandalf um, and Saruman like they're like how serious they are and like how they act, and then you have him who's just kind of like goofy and like animals are coming in and out of his hat, and he's like like a weird nature guy. You could have
But
had him like a little more serious.
yeah, because like there was that like obviously his he loved the birds and the beast. That was his thing. He was like I said, there were some aspects of it that were true. Like he was somebody who liked animals and like being in nature, more of a loner. But they made him a little too kooky, where like he's got bird poop on his face. His hair is literally a bird's nest. It's one of those things where I feel like they just like take something and just like exaggerate it to 100, where it's just not what it's supposed to be anymore.
Was it? He had like the sled of jackrabbits.
Oh, the Ruscabella rabbits.
Yeah,
Because
it
it was
got
what,
to.
like, 'cause he did ride horse like in Lord of the Rings, wasn't he? He was on a horse when he met Gandalf, right? I mean, like he's
Yeah,
not
that's
some
yeah.
weirdo who rides a sled of rabbits.
Yeah, like he didn't have to like exaggerate his love for like animals and stuff. Like where you basically make him like he's like senile at times.
No, it reminds you of like Lex Luthor from Batman vs Superman, like ooh, oh, like he's almost like making those kinds of expressions, like ooh, Gandalf.
Yeah, he's like a cartoon of himself.
Yeah, a little too much of an exaggeration. Like I guess he kind of fills his purpose for the story, but just I feel like it was a bit cartoony, like we said.
Yeah. Or was it the that was another one of my like favorite scenes when they were in Rivendell and Galadriel and Gandalf are talking, and she's like Mithrandir, why the halfling? And he's like and then he goes on a speech about Sauron believes it's the only great power can keep like great evil back, but it's I believe it's the small things, the ordinary folk, simple acts of love and like that was cool, like that scene. And they
Yeah,
also had like
again,
the original soundtrack playing too.
again, like those are the scenes again where that's why I say I'm mixed. Like some people I guess really don't like it, but that's why I always say I'm mixed because like there's scenes like that. I do like some of the stuff in the beginning too, like when the dwarves are singing, and I guess it's a bit of a waste of time, but I personally don't mind it.
Yeah, and the thing is like it's not like one of those trilogies like where you can say like, oh, you shouldn't compare it to Lord of the Rings, but you obviously can because they are connected, and so it's not unfair to compare them, and obviously it doesn't hold up, but like I try to like enjoy it for what it is. It's a fun, there's heartfelt moments in it. Obviously, there's stuff that they didn't need in there, but it's those moments that I enjoy.
Yeah, like I guess I know there's always the comparison to Lord of the Rings, but even the book, I don't really feel like compares to Lord of the Rings because this is again, this was more of like a simple fantasy story about a hobbit going on a journey. Where Lord of the Rings is much more in depth, like with its themes and stuff. It's a denser book too. Like it's not. I guess the comparisons were inevitable, but I feel like even if they did the Hobbit like the best possible justice, I don't think it could ever stand up to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
it's just
just trying. They're
hard.
trying to tell two different things. And I
Yeah,
do think that's, I guess, a part of the problem with this trilogy too, where they try to make it more like Lord of the Rings and loses some of the aspect of this story, which makes it unique in its own way. Like, it doesn't have to be some epic quest like Lord of the Rings that's going to shake up Middle Earth. Like, this is just, I mean, I guess the events do kind of in the lore and Legendarium, but it's not meant to be like that, at least compared to Lord of the Rings.
Should we
yeah.
move on to the Desolation of Smog? We've been on the first one for a little bit.
I
Yeah.
guess
Well,
some of my thoughts. I think this is my favorite out of the trilogy. Just gonna put that out there.
I thought this one was the second best. I think I prefer the first one over this one. Um,
what?
it-
I said I prefer the first one.
oh, you did? Oh, I thought you said you
Yeah.
preferred. When you
Yeah,
said this one, I thought you were referring to the Desolation of Smog.
No, no, I
yeah.
meant this one.
In
Oh,
terms of in terms of like overall movie, I like this one the best. Um, I was just gonna say another one of my favorite scenes I liked was Bilbo and Gollum when they're doing the riddles. I like that scene too. But
Oh, yeah, how could we forget that? Like,
yeah,
especially when he
um,
spares Gollum, like, you see the pity of Bilbo, which
yeah.
changes the fate of Middle Earth forever.
Which was it was also a nice payoff too, where Gandalf when he hands him the sword of like talking about true courage and stuff, and then you see him putting it into action. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and I agree in terms of like overall movie and everything. I like this one the most out of the trilogy.
And I feel like it makes sense too, because this is the one that had the most work done on it. Didn't have the, like, I know Colin mentioned filler, but this I think has the least amount of filler.
the second one?
Especially,
Yeah.
no, the first, we're still
No.
talking about the first one. Are
Oh,
you paying attention?
I said let's talk about the second one because we
I'm
have.
trying to wrap up. I'm trying to wrap up thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. No. I was just. I was talking about the scene with Bilbo and
oh.
Gollum. That was in the first one. But yeah, I know. It had good action. It was the story for the most part. It wasn't like you're saying. No, not much filler. Um, it was just like the most complete.
Yeah, because again, this had the most pre-production, most work done on it before Jackson took over, and that's, I think it shows it was definitely the most well thought out, especially after the next two. Any more thoughts before we move on, Colin?
No, no. It's just we don't have a lot of time per. You know. Anyway, I think for the Desolation of Smog, it's like what do you call it's like when you never mind. It's when this starts. It shows that things start to get messy, and this one has a lot of nonsense that they added in for no particular reason. I think you told me Legolas is not in the book, at least he's not in this movie. They add him for whatever reason. They add that Tariel person who's not in the book.
Not
They
even in the
add
book. She
yeah
doesn't exist at
yeah
all.
yeah. She's created for the movie. They added a dumb love triangle with her and some dwarf. I forget what his name is, like Keely or Feely.
It's
It's
Keely.
Keely.
it doesn't matter. And
Jeez.
I think the thing I hated the most about the movie was the ending where they trap Smog, or they attempt to trap Smog by having all that gold in a statue, and then they
They try to,
undo the
yeah.
statue and it dumps gold on him. I thought that was incredibly dumb. It honestly felt pretty jarring seeing that kind of goofy nonsense, especially like the first one. And this movie too, they took themselves relatively serious, and to see something so goofy like that felt wrong, especially in this movie too. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smog is
I
also not in the movie that much either.
Well, it wasn't that much in the book either, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
like the book tried not the book. The movie tried to sell the Desolation of Smog. Obviously, he's not going to die in it, but they're trying to sell you that he's the main villain in this movie at least, and he's barely in it.
Well,
Yeah.
Desolation of
Well,
Smog refers to what's it, Dale.
What?
No, Dale, the city Dale. That's what it's called, like the Desolation of Smog.
Oh. Oh,
I know what you're saying.
my
Like they're trying
point
to
still
like build up
stands though,
Smaug.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then it cuts back to Gandalf on. I wrote down the place Dol Guldur, which I think you told me is not in the book, but it's in the appendices
Yes. So
of the Return of
we'll
the
get to that
King.
more, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I thought that just. I know they're trying to set up, but when you're trying to tell a story, especially like as we were saying earlier, The Hobbit, it's more small scale compared to Lord of the Rings. You know, they're not fighting for the fate of Middle Earth. They're just trying to reclaim something that was theirs. So I did
yeah.
not like when it would cut back to Gandalf and his nonsense.
yeah.
That takes away from Bilbo, and I know they're trying to explain he goes missing in the book, but
Yeah.
I thought
I
that was unnecessary.
I guess we'll start with the top of your complaints because
Yes,
you mentioned the love triangle and
hater.
Legolas.
yes, I thought that was
Yeah, because I
out
don't
of
think
place.
anybody liked that.
Yeah,
Because obviously, like, I could live if Legolas had a cameo in Mirkwood because obviously it's probably where he would be. Whatever, just a
Yeah,
cameo. It doesn't hurt anybody, right? Because that's his father, whatnot. But I don't understand why they made him like a major character for the next two movies. Like, he plays no part in the story. Like, I think Gandalf's like, "Oh, Legolas, I'm so glad to see you." Like, I don't know if they really knew each other.
yeah. Like,
And like Toriel too, like she obviously doesn't exist like a made up character because they're obviously trying to emulate Aragorn and Arwen's love story for this trilogy, but it never worked. It was just a disaster. Like there's no reason for it.
yeah, there was no need for a love story in any of this. But
I guess they wanted to add some like tragedy at the end, but it's just didn't work out. And I think Tolkien addresses too, like you know how there's like relationships between elves and men because to them he said like they're like genetically similar enough where they can have kids. Like dwarves are a whole different breed. Like they cannot intermingle with elves or humans. So the fact they made a love story between them is like, breaking canon because like it's not supposed to happen. Not that it matters, but it just didn't work like in lore or even like in the story.
yeah, with this one, the for me, like there are a lot of moments in the. I shouldn't say a lot of moments. There's like a few moments in this one that I really enjoy, and the rest is kind of like just boring and like drags. Especially like you were saying, Colin, when they cut back to Gandalf, like him being imprisoned and all that stuff. Like I for what the time that Smog was in it, I love that. I thought they did for the little time that he was in. I thought they did a great job with him. And then
I
I did like
agree.
the scene. What?
I was trying to chime in. I said, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I love the Smaug stuff too.
especially him and Bilbo's dialogue. I did like the river scene, like when they're in the barrels and stuff. I just liked how like to see the dwarves working together. I thought that was cool,
I might
and
have
then
to
also
disagree with you on that. I did not like that scene too much.
it,
It again, it felt really out of place. I know they're more goofier the the dwarves, but that was just a terrible CGI
I was
feat
gonna
they
ask
made.
you like if it was more of the like because I also the one thing with that scene was I didn't get the unnecessary GoPro camera in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was jarring. Oh my god.
Yeah, that like threw me off, but I still enjoyed that scene for what it was because I always like the scenes where the dwarves were working together,
I
especially
don't
like when they're tossing back the axe and like chopping down the branch to like get the for the orcs to fall in.
I don't think that was in the
But
book though, right? That them fighting
No.
back in barrel. Yeah.
no, no. Um, and then um I did like the spider scene in Mirkwood.
Yeah, that was fine.
And then because because it was a cool Bilbo moment, and then it was also like the dwarves like when they're like fight the spiders at the end. What was it the one spider like all the dwarves grab a leg and just pull it apart?
So brutal.
But like those scenes, like I enjoyed, but like a lot of the parts of the movie were just kind of dragged. Um, I did not like the love triangle at all. And like I agree that Legolas, it would have been like a cool cameo, especially like the scene where he's like, oh, "What is this disgusting creature?" It's like that's my wee lad Gimli. Like, all right, that's a cool nod. You don't need much more than that.
I would have been fine
But
if he was just like in, Thranduil's chamber. Let the son, he'll probably be king whenever Thranduil dies. So if
yeah,
he's meeting with Thorin, he's in the background, whatever, no big
I
deal.
think I think it's fine if you cut him off up to the point where he goes after Tariel. You could have ended when once they leave Mirkwood. That's the end of him. You don't need more than that. Like it's fine when he comes and helps them in Mirkwood, talking with the king, and they're interrogating the orc and all that. But you don't need more than that.
I'd even like the interrogating New York. So it's just like, I guess, I guess we could get to it later, but like the whole how they dealt with Sauron, it was just kind of dumb when it came to the lore. I guess we'll talk about it now then, because they made it seem like they didn't know Sauron was back when in the books Sauron never died. I mean, they knew he was there. The whole reason the wizards came to Middle Earth was to stop Sauron. Like there was never a secret that Sauron was back. Like they knew he was back the entire time. They never could find him. So this whole like, oh, Sauron's back. How did we not know? It's like, well, he never died. When they defeat him at the Battle of the Last Alliance, his spirit fled because the ring wasn't destroyed. His spirit endured and fled east. That's where he rebuilt his strength and came back.
Huh.
So again, this whole nonsense of like, oh, Sauron could be back. It's not
Yeah.
like, and thing too with the Nazgul. The Nazgul, they mentioned like the destruction of Arnor, but they never say explicitly. Like when they defeated the Witch King, that's how we got it. That's how the Nazgul got his name, the Witch King. They defeated him. He fled to Minas Morgul. He was never killed. Neither were the other Nazgul. You couldn't kill them. So again, like this, like the Nazgul are awake. Like it was never a secret that they were still around. They knew that they were still around. So again, this whole like uncovering the plot of Sauron was just kind of nonsense.
Somehow Sauron survived.
So now he has returned.
Down.
Because that's stuff I just didn't like. Because again, it never even happened. I mean, the White Council attacking Dol Guldur did happen, but it happened a lot different in the books. But again, they knew Sauron was there. They knew he was around. It wasn't a secret to anybody.
Wait, did that happen in
Yeah.
the second movie with Galadriel helping too? That was in the second one.
That was in the third one,
Oh, I
but
was gonna say I could have sworn that was in the third one. I don't remember that
I was
happening.
talking about
Yeah,
like
yeah, because
this
Gandalf
subplot.
gets imprisoned in this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the thing too. I think it's an extended scene, but like when they have, I don't know if it's in this one or the third one, but I don't remember. But when they have Gandalf and captured, Gandalf had one of the three Elven rings, and they mentioned that he had it. If Sauron knew he had it, he would not hesitate to chop off Gandalf's finger and take it from him because he was desperately searching for the Elven rings. Again, that's like a stupid thing. They shouldn't have had Gandalf captured or even referenced the fact that Gandalf had one of the Elven rings because he would have taken that in a heartbeat.
I think it would have been better if they just had Gandalf disappear and then focus on Bilbo and the dwarves.
Obviously, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
more like this how the story I don't think even works too. And another thing too, which I've never seen anybody address, but in the Return of the King, where they talk about the prophecy of the Witch King, how no man can defeat him. Well, they implied that like a man did defeat the Witch King because apparently he was killed and imprisoned, but the necromancer brought him back to life or something. So
Yeah.
the prophecy doesn't really work then if he was killed already by man.
But just to clarify, the necromancer is Sauron, right? Sauron, whatever.
Yes, Sauron.
Yeah.
And the other thing too about the necromancer, where like they had the whole subplot of like Thorin's father trying to figure out what happened to him, which again, a lot of that stuff did happen in the books. Like Sauron did capture him and took the Dwarven ring, but it was just in the appendices. Like it's not really a big deal for the Hobbit or the story. It's not something I really feel like they needed to cover. I mean, I guess the whole subplot too, they didn't really need to cover, but here we are. I guess they had to connect to Lord of the Rings somehow. Like Sauron's back somehow. Somehow Sauron has returned.
Again, that stuff just felt shoehorned in with Gandalf and him getting captured. Because I know you said it's in the Return of the King technically at the
Yeah,
like
the
the
appendices,
appendix.
yeah.
Yeah, and it just feels just unnecessary to just add that into this story in the
Yeah, I
grand
mean,
scheme of things. It feels wholly unnecessary.
'cause I feel like if you had to, I feel like you need all this like oh, is Sauron back? We don't know who he is. Like it's like, we the viewer's gonna know who it is pretty quickly. Like it's obviously Sauron. I feel like if they were to do this, they could have just like talked about like the White Council meeting up and, casting out Sauron, which is what actually would happen in the appendices. Because again, I feel like if he has a tie, that's a better way. It's
Yeah.
quicker, more to the point. None of this mystery nonsense of stuff that didn't happen.
I feel like this, like the whole setting up, Sauron, like Saruman and stuff like that would have been fine if the trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy originally had this was the first, and then Lord of the Rings had come out. But the fact that like this is like 10 years after Lord of the Rings is already established and everyone knows, like you don't need to rehash this. I think just like you're saying, like this is lower scale. Just focus on them getting to the mountain, fighting, dealing with Smaug and all that, and like the Battle of Five Armies. Like you don't need to fill in with all the stuff that people already know. It would have been better had this actually come out before Lord of the Rings. But
In fact, I mean, if it came out before though, I don't think they would even mention this stuff. Because yeah, this is explicitly to tie into Lord of the Rings.
well, I'm saying is that like if they were really trying to set up for Lord of the Rings like trilogy to succeed it, like that would have been fine. But you don't need to like rehash all this. It's really just them because it was just a mess. They needed fillers.
Well, stuff like that too, and like I think they wanted to kind of like copy the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like we mentioned before, like the love story, because Lord of the Rings had a love story, and I guess technically a love triangle with Eowyn, but not really. So they wanted to have that too. It's like poetry, it rhymes, but it just like they have it, but it's done much
Yeah,
worse and completely unnecessary. The second time,
and then they also like they had like a Groomer Wormtongue 2.0.
yeah, I guess we'll get to the Lake Town stuff, but yeah, but they had Alfred. It's basically like a Grima knockoff too, where I liked Grima, but this guy was just I guess he plays his part well enough too, but just like unnecessary. Like you don't need to know who the master of Lake Town is. Like 'cause in the book, he just called the master, like barely did anything.
Yeah,
And like this
I,
all, and like the other thing too, like how he runs it like with a tight fist, and how he's like, oh, Bard's out to get me and stuff. Again, stuff that didn't happen in the book. Like Bard was just like an archer. Like he was a descendant of royalty, but like he wasn't some hot shot trying to take on the master of Lake Town. Like again, like stuff they add, I don't really feel like it's necessary. It doesn't really add anything. It kind of like detracts from the story and
Did they add the
just
orcs
useless padding.
invading? Was that in the book too?
Of course, it wasn't.
Okay. So the orcs never even touched Lake Town?
No,
Okay.
and no dwarves were left behind either. I mean,
I think I
Kili
saw
got sick.
I think I saw somewhere that said that one a difference they also made was the children of Bard, where he didn't have a daughter, or he only had like two children or something.
Yeah, he didn't have two daughters. It was I
Yeah,
think just I forget his son's name. Bard. I think his name was Brand.
that's like
I
a
forget.
that is a weird thing to change. It's so insignificant, yet you change it anyway. Like, what's the purpose?
Yeah, I don't know either because I don't even like an answer. It's a weird change.
yeah, they like made Bard the people's champ.
Yeah, again, like just a weird thing. Like again, it wasn't in the book. It doesn't really add anything that he's the people's champ. I guess that's to make him like, in the third one, where he eventually become like the leader of them.
The return of the Bard.
But it's he was just I don't know. I just don't really feel like it worked. I guess the excuse to make him the new king, but he was descendant of royalty already. I mean, he should have the right to reclaim Dale because he was the when Dale got destroyed, his grandfather, not
I
his
guess
ancestor was the leader.
I guess they like try to like do like an Aragorn knockoff, like the reluctant hero at first.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
that's a good point too. Yeah, because the trilogy had that, so this has to have it too.
yeah. They needed like a guy, the people's champ
A
kind of guy.
reluctant king.
Yeah, like it wasn't bad all that, but it felt like unnecessary, kind of dragged on at times. Especially there when they were in the lake town. I feel like it was a little long before they went to the mountain. Like they didn't need to spend as much time like setting up, the scumbag mayor and Greenwood, 2.0. Like you didn't need that. You could have, if you want to introduce Bard a little bit and give a backstory, like he deals with the dwarves, and then they move on, like, and then like Keely being sick, and then Tariel shows up.
It's all
I also
nonsense they added for padding.
I also did not. The one thing that really I didn't like was the rivalry between Bog and Legolas.
Oh,
Who?
Bolg, yeah.
Bolg.
Who's that?
Bolg was the orc with
He
the.
was Azog's right hand man.
Oh, is he
He's
the
the one
one that
with.
had like a bowling ball in his head, like a spike ball?
No, he had like
Oh.
like plates of metal like welded to his head or
Yeah,
something.
that guy. That guy. Yeah.
Yeah, like when Azog sent him off to find them, like he was his right hand man. Like they did not need him and Legolas to like have this like rivalry or something. It was
I mean, they need a
that.
lot of the stuff. Like not even the rapper. Like none of this character should even be there.
Yeah,
But I guess after the whole Lake Town stuff, we get to the probably the better part of the movie where I guess yeah, better part of the movie where they finally reach Erebor. And they finally meet Smog. I mean, the stuff before where they kind of just give up on the quest.
Yeah, they're right there. They're just like,
yeah.
let's go home. Let's leave.
Yeah, it was a bit dumb, but I think again we get to the best part of the movie where they finally the face to face with Smaug. You see Bilbo trying to find the Arkenstone stuff.
Yeah.
Now, is
I,
the treasure room that big in the book?
Of course not.
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, because realistically, if it was that big, he would have never found it.
Like it was absurdly big. Like it's like what, like several football fields worth of like gold.
Yeah.
That's why I laughed like when they're like, "Oh, you'll know when you see it." But I was like, "Dude, that thing could have been buried like 1,000 feet under gold. Was he gonna have to like go swimming?"
Like Scrooge McDuck.
I think he
Yeah.
would die.
That's what I mean. Like they're like, "Oh, we're just gonna send him in. He's tiny. He could." I was like, "Oh my god!" Like there's like a 99% chance he wouldn't have found it.
Stat that.
We need
Yeah, but like again, it was like
fact
just
checkers.
absurd.
But
Yeah, that was probably my favorite scene though, meeting
yeah,
Smaug, because
I also did like the little scene he had with was it Balin?
yeah,
Well, yeah, like where they're having a little heart to heart. Man, he's like he talks about the courage of hobbits. Like I like that scene. But and then like him and Smog, even though Smog was ridiculously big, I still think Benedict Cumberbatch did a good job with his voice and everything, um, and his character, how he was taunting him. But he was also weirdly polite to Bilbo. He's like, "Who are you and where do you come from? May I ask?" Like he did a good job as being like very he had manners, but he was also any second was willing to kill him. And then he
like
taunts him with like the dwarves, like he knew they were there the whole time.
he's very charismatically evil, where you couldn't help but like him, even though
Yeah,
again he's a dragon who's like very selfish and greedy. But still,
yeah. I love the line where he's like, "I'm almost tempted to let you take it to watch it drive him into madness." Like that's like so like that's why like when I look at the movie overall, it falls short and it's a mess. But like the Smog they nailed, and like other short scenes like so that's like what these scenes like keep it from like for me like not enjoying it. Like for I enjoyed it for like these scenes, especially Smaug.
I just wanted to add real quick. Did you ever see the behind the scenes where Cumberbatch was like
Yeah,
he
he's
did
on
like
his
the
hands and
mocap?
knees.
Yeah,
He
he did
did
the
the
mocap.
mocap for it, and it just looks so silly. Like he's got the mocap, and he's like trying to pretend to be a dragon,
I
like
feel so
slither
embarrassed watching
and
that.
and
Well,
move
it
his
was
head
like
like a lizard.
it was like what they did for King Ghidorah in King of the Monsters.
Yeah, it just I know they're trying to like give a best performance, but like I can only imagine like someone taking a step back, like what are we doing? Like he's pretending to be like a lizard.
Yeah, imagine some like office person comes in about to deliver a
Sure,
script, and you just see
Mr. Cover.
he just sees him slithering on the ground. He's like, "What is happening?"
His wife comes to stop by the studio and just sees him doing that.
So eating kale or something. Because
And
imagine
then,
like a producer like coming in, it's like, okay, let me see how the movie's doing. Let me like see how the filming's going. And he sees like
oh my
Cumberbatch like
god,
pretending to be a lizard. It's like what is going on? Like, are you okay? Is he okay?
He like comes in at the part him doing the mocap. He's like, "My claws are spears." He's like, looks at him.
and then immediately after that, Small gets trapped in gold.
Yeah, like that whole like I didn't like that part where they were trying to like scheme to stop Smaug. Like they should just get like in the books they just like, okay, well we're not gonna fight him. And
I was
he
gonna
goes and
say,
kills like
I
them.
think I read somewhere that they knew they didn't stand a chance, so they didn't try to attack him or
You're
anything.
like, yeah, whatever. We lost. We messed up. Yeah, because he wanted to kill them. end up like hiding themselves in the mountains. So then Smaug goes and attacks Lake Town, which I feel like would have been better than obviously the schlock of them trying to like start the forges. Oh, we have to start the forges, then we're gonna trap them in gold, and it's just stupid.
Yeah, especially when it follows Smog and Bilbo's scene, which was done so well.
And I feel like them like trying to trick Smaug kind of takes it away because like he comes up very cunning and intelligent when he's talking to Bilbo. Then when like he's chasing him, so he's like a bumbling idiot. It's like Scooby Doo, where like oh over here,
Yeah, he
Smaug, come
like
chase
over
us.
pursues them and he slips and falls.
Yeah, again, it starts into that cartoony area where it's just not again like the movie. Not Lord of the Rings, but it's
Yeah,
taking itself seriously enough where it's
es-
believable
espe-
enough. Doesn't
especially
take you
when
out
you
of the movie.
especially when they took time in the prologue of the first one to establish how he just ran through them. Like he ran through an entire race of dwarves, and but he
And
can't
like
catch he can't catch the Stooges.
And
Like,
it's not the Apollo 13. Like they have like they're missing like four members too. Like they're not even at full strength and they're trying to fight them.
and yeah, and Bilbo has no battle experience. Like,
What's he gonna do? That's
yeah,
like
or that was and like when they tried to drown him in gold.
it's just nonsense. Like you were saying before, like, I feel like my favorite scenes in this movie are always like stuff they mainly pull straight from the books. Like I like Bilbo and the spiders, you when they meet Beorn, the conversation with Smaug. Like those are probably my favorite scenes in the movie. Like
I
as
did
close
like
as you can to get to
Beorn.
the book.
I did like Beorn. He was
Like
cool.
he could have been in it more, but like
Yeah.
I still like those are easily my favorite scenes. Because a lot of the stuff too, like it's just a bunch of schlock they added, which adds nothing. It usually makes the story worse because they want to pad stuff out
Yeah.
and copy the Lord of the Rings trilogy because it has to rhyme.
Like them copying. Also, another thing that they copied was the tracking of the group, like where how Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli were tracking Merry and Pippin with the Uruk-hai, and they have that with Tariel and Legolas tracking the dwarves being chased.
Yeah, I guess kind of too, but
It was
her
just
whole
like
character was just a waste.
yeah, you just didn't need to cut to like and then Tariel and Legolas are like arguing over whether we should pursue them. I'm like, why are we having this conversation?
Yeah, it didn't happen in the book. It's just nonsense.
Yeah,
Speaking of
And they tried to add
nonsense,
like
oh, I was gonna say, speaking of nonsense, should we go into the one that's the most nonsensical of them all?
I just wanted to add one thing because Daniel was
Yes.
mentioning like the Toriel, how they added some like classism too, where like, oh, or you can't date my daughter because she's like a lowly Sylvan elf. It's like, what does it matter? I know it wasn't like a big thing, but it's like a weird thing to add where like, oh, you can't, she's not royal, which, whatever. It just again more like junk they added. Wasn't the books, but yeah, we'll get to the schlockiest one of all, the third one.
I think one thing this movie did well was the relationship with Bilbo and Thorin, where they actually felt like companions in this movie.
Yeah, because I guess that's the benefit of having like three movies where at least you can kind of see
What's
why they are
strange is
friends.
like I didn't mention this in the other ones because I think I forgot, but they don't really have too many interactions with Bilbo and the dwarves where they like start to grow together. This one they actually did a good job. I feel like with that aspect.
yeah. The only dwarf that he had any relationship or had to seem to be on a good or have a friendship with was Balin.
Yeah, and him and Thorin were the only
Yeah.
ones.
Like
Yeah,
that's probably my favorite scene from this movie. Is when Thorin's like descending into the madness, and then he comes over to Bilbo to question him about the Arkenstone, and then Bilbo opens his hands like the acorn from the tree, and they have that little heart to heart. After all this time you kept it, and then Bilbo goes in to say like, I'm going to plant it when I get back. To so when I look at it, I remember the good, the bad, and how lucky I am that I made it back. And like him and Thorn have that little heart to heart, like that was probably my favorite scene in this entire movie. It actually felt like you're saying, like they actually had a relationship, and Thorn, you see more of like Thorn respected him at that point, like he appreciated his courage and stuff, and you actually kind of felt bad for Thorn, like it kind of reminded you that he was a person, it just he fell under the
The
spell
dragon
and
sickness.
yeah, the sickness and stuff. So like that scene, I really appreciated for both their characters. It was cool to like reiterate like their friendship and respect for each other.
And I
Like, so,
think. Oh, oh, oh.
I was gonna say, well, like that scene, and when he gives Bilbo the
Me
Mithros
too.
sword,
Yeah, I like that scene too.
Yeah.
We
a
can't
kingly gift.
we can't forget the scene where Legolas defies gravity and
Oh, we're gonna get to that later.
runs up. That was one of my favorite scenes too.
It's like a funny progression. I guess I don't think we got to now, but like it's a funny progression of like Legolas's I guess fighting abilities. How like if you look at like all six movies, in what was it, the Fellowship of the Ring, he's just basically a good archer. In the second one, he's sliding down on the shield. Third one, he's like jumping on top of the Olifants, and now we get to this one where
He's
he's
like
like literally
yeah.
defying
In the
gravity.
third one, or in the Return of the King, he slides off the nose of a falling elephant.
Yeah, like
Well,
from the
well, also,
Flintstones.
also don't forget in Desolation of Smog and the river scene, he's like jumping on their heads to get
Yeah,
across the river.
and perfectly balanced on one leg, shooting arrows like at the orcs, perfectly on
It,
target.
it seems like Peter Jackson thinks Legolas is some superhuman. He's a superhero, pretty
Yeah,
much.
like it just and slowly has gotten worse over every movie that he's appeared in.
Yeah, like that scene, like that's what I mean. Like with him and Balg, like that scene, that fight was like so unnecessary, and like it kind of dragged out, especially with the ending of like he's defying gravity, and then it takes so long for him to kill Balg. And I'm like, he realistically, if he's as good as an archer as this, he could just one shotted him right in the head and ended it. But
Because like
they,
in like Tolkien's world, like there really wasn't this like freakish superhero stuff. It was more like when they were great heroes, it was more like great strength where you can maybe like fight for a long time and like super endurance. It wasn't like they're leaping across, defying gravity or like sliding on Oliphant's necks. That's what it was more of like these
yeah.
superhuman threats or like their magical abilities and stuff.
Also, we have to touch on this because it's such a big difference from the book and the movie. Bilbo was knocked out for like the entire battle.
Yeah, he didn't really play a part in it. I mean, the whole battle was like a couple of pages. It wasn't because I know he was knocked out, but like it was the battle was like an afterthought because Tolkien didn't really want to like dwell on like the battle and the violence.
It didn't like he woke up and Thorn was dead already.
Yeah, he woke up and like yeah, Keely and Feely were dead. The battle was over. Thorn was dying. Like the battle was just yeah, all made up for
But
this purpose of the book.
yeah, like
The
obviously on
movie.
a movie, like you don't want to, you don't want like as a movie goer, you'd probably feel disappointed just to like from Bilbo's perspective, he's just knocked out and then wakes up. All right, fight's over. Like, but
Like that's a change I can understand. But yeah, why they made too?
yeah,
Because again, like as like a general audience, like I could feel again like cheated where you kind of expect this battle where everybody is fighting for the treasure and then oh it's over, you missed the whole battle.
yeah. No, yeah, no. Obviously, in a movie sense, you got to show it, but like, I just was like that. That is a huge difference from the book and the movie. Like Bilbo's
Like
just knocked out.
kind of other end of the purist might disagree, but I feel like it was a maybe to the extent they showed the battle, you could probably not have a whole movie dedicated to it, but I can see why they would show something because
And
again it'd be disappointing not to.
I don't know if it bothered you guys, but the CGI for Dane,
Yeah,
Who's
that was
Dane?
kind of he's
Dane
the
Ironfoot, he was
but
Thorin's cousin that
Oh,
showed up.
okay, okay.
Remember when Bilbo was like,
Yeah, he's the guy in the
is
pig. He's the guy in the pig.
yeah, yeah,
was a
the
warthog.
the warthog.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny though. But also too, like we'll get to the CGI, but also his character was inaccurate because he actually was a pretty reasonable king for the dwarves. He wasn't like stubborn or more stuck in his ways than Thorn. He was actually a pretty reasonable king.
Yeah, and the other stuff again, like we talked about before, but a lot of the stuff they gave Thorin, they actually took from Dane. Like he's the one that killed Azog, and he did it like at a really young age too for a dwarf, like 30 something, and they don't dwarves aren't considered adults until like they're 70. So he did something like really impressive, really young,
Because they live to be what, like 200 years, dwarves
like
usually.
250.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
but
a bit a quick tangent, but like Dane, he was at the time of Lord of the Rings, he was like over two, like he was like 252 or something, and he was still fighting like almost full strength. He ended up dying at the when they orc
But
attacked
didn't he? But
Erebor.
didn't he die defending?
Yeah, I think it was like Bard the Second's body.
Yeah, that's what, like he was honorable, but
Like, I want to go back to
also
like you mentioned
the
CGI
CGI.
Dane. Yeah, because I think the
Yeah,
actor had cancer at the time,
oh
or
jeez.
he was going through chemo or something. Like there was a reason why like they weren't just doing it for the fun of it. Like I think they
No,
wanted
I
the actor.
I just noticed like when they saw him, I was like, why are they doing CGI for this guy? Like,
I'm saying like that's why the actor was
yeah.
going through cancer or something, and then they want him for the role though.
Oh jeez.
Because I looked it up too. I think he was like one of their first choices to play Gimli, but I think scheduling conflicts or something, and he didn't play Gimli.
I just remember like at first when I saw it, like it just felt off putting, like this guy's
Yeah,
CGI.
yeah. Like why?
Just, but
I can't
I
be that
did
hard.
I will say I did like Dane in the battle, how he was just not, so casually beating up the orcs, and he's just talking with Thorin in the middle of it. He's like headbutting everyone. Thorin, how you doing? Like I did like that for like, that little scene, but I just know his character was different and how they portrayed him. And then I don't I've the I felt my biggest gripe with the battle in this movie. Um, it felt so much was shoehorned in at the end.
Sure, and I would say like there's tons of like the whole movie felt like padding for the most part.
Yeah, like you didn't need the, or was it the oh, wait, were they the wheelworms? Were they?
So I don't. They weren't. So they technically do exist in Legendarium, but like I think Bilbo made a passing reference and like it was like the great wereworms of like I think they said like the Gobi Desert, like the Far East Desert. He was referencing the Gobi Desert, but point
Yeah.
is they do technically exist, but they were never in the book.
And I felt like some of the fighting in the city with Bard dragged on, like it cut away too much from like Bilbo and Thorin. Um, or I felt like you maybe you didn't need Thorin and them to chase Azog like up to the mountain. Like you didn't need the fight to be up there. You could have had it on the battlefield. You didn't need to like split up everyone. Like
Yeah, like
they took a
yeah,
lot of time, like them going up to the mountain, finding everyone, and then you have Tariel and Keely's fight scene with Balg, and then it goes to Balg and Legolas, um, and then it cuts back to the town with Bard and stuff. Like it was just all over the place because a lot of stuff was thrown in there, and like you could have condensed it. Like if Adam Wingard, maybe if he was in there, could have condensed it down, but like it was very messy and a lot of stuff was like thrown in. They could have organized it much better.
well, I was gonna say, I could see why they would do this because obviously you're trying to pad out the movie, so you try to like make different storylines. Like, oh, the armies have to be split. Like the humans go defend Dale, which I don't know why they would defend it. Like the city's already kind of in ruins. Just what are they gonna do? But they split them off. They have the dwarves and elves. No, the elves help the humans, but like they're splitting off the armies. Then they have the stuff with Azog. Because I get why they did it. It was to try to extend the runtime and I don't know, I guess create tension and are they going to win? Oh, now they're getting overrun, but now they're defeating them, and so the back and forth between the battle. But all in all, it really just felt like padding. You, this is my least watch, I guess, Middle Earth movie by far. Like I've seen it like maybe twice before I rewatched it for this because it's such a chore to sit through.
And also like another one of the things I felt was so unnecessary because they literally one scene was Bjorn came in.
Yeah, Beorn.
Yeah, and like why? Uh,
Again, he does appear, but like he also had a bigger role in the books too, where I guess I didn't mind him
I
as
just wish
much.
like I just wish if they're gonna have him in the fight, show more of him. Especially he turns into a bear. I mean, like spend more time in that. Not they could have cut out like Tariel and Keely's. He's dying in her arms scene. Like you don't need that. Like show Beorn on the battlefield. Like that would be better.
Oh, I just remembered too. Remember the whole, I guess, little subplot or thing they had going on where Tauriel and Legolas went to Angmar for no reason. I know for this movie's purposes, it was to see the Second Army led by Bolg. But I was like, why are they going to Angmar? Angmar was destroyed in the 2,000 years ago. Why is there an army there?
I don't know.
Like it was just again like just like throwing nonsense and they're like hoping people don't notice.
Also, you know who I felt was criminally sidelined in this one was Gandalf.
Yeah.
It felt like in this one he didn't have much to do. Like they didn't really show him on the battle. Like he was on the battlefield, but they didn't show him really fight or anything. Um, he
I
was
didn't
much more there.
I didn't mind that much. Mind that he's not in the movie that much. I rather like I didn't care when he and Galadriel and Saruman are fighting the
Elrond.
necromancer. Yeah, I didn't care that those old people were doing that. I rather would have it focus on Bilbo and the
No,
dwarves.
I agree, but it's just like if you're gonna have these like, especially like someone like Gandalf, like you could have given him more screen time over Tarion Legolas, someone who was actually there. You don't need like I feel like it would have been better, or just not to have him there
Uh,
because he's just more there to deliver dialogue. But then they have him on the battlefield with Bilbo, and he just doesn't do anything.
I don't know. I mean, I do think, although Gandalf, I guess he wasn't fighting much. I think almost every scene he was in, I liked. Maybe except for like the White Council scene, but like I liked most of the scenes he was in. Like telling like he was talking to Thranduil and Bard. Like, is gold so important that you're willing to spill dwarf blood over it? And he's like talking, and then Bilbo comes in. Like that's I guess one of my favorite scenes when Bilbo gives up the Arkenstone. You know, it just shows you like how good of a person Bilbo is, and Gandalf made the right choice in bringing him on for the journey. Stuff like that I liked. Bring some
Yeah,
positivity. Where we start going more into the negative. Like I know you mentioned the White Council scene, which again, Tolkien never explicitly says how they kick Sauron out. It was just more like the White Council drives out Sauron from Dol Guldur, which I kind of prefer that kind of vague version because I feel like with magic in Tolkien's world, it's very low key. Like it's not impressive. Like you're not seeing thunderbolts fly or something. It's very low key. So like having them try to clear him out is not going to turn out well visually, which I feel like was what happened in the movie too. Like it was just Galadriel like getting mad and using her file for some reason that Sauron like kicking him out. I don't know. I felt like it was just kind of lame.
yeah. I did. The one part I did laugh at was when the orcs were breaching the city, and they just had the one troll with like the like giant brick on his head just
Yeah.
dive headfirst into the wall and then KO'd himself.
I mean, it's such schlock, but it is funny.
Yeah,
Like,
like that was funny. He
or
just
like there was like one orc too, like he had like no arms or no legs, like he had like metal stumps at all of his appendages, and it was fighting. Like, and you think he was blind too. Like, why would you use this orc to fight? Like, it's more effort to like make him battle ready than just killing him. Like, I don't know why they would do that. Like, it's so stupid, but I get a kick out of it.
Yeah, like that stuff was funny.
I
And
think too,
all
like, what else did they do in the movie that was stupid?
they kept um they kept the Greamer guy
Oh my
Alfred
God, yeah,
alive.
that. They were like following him, like how he was trying to escape the fighting. He dressed up like a woman to escape the fighting, and then like, he was stealing gold. Oh, like this is just like nonsense. Like this is like what was like Peter Jackson thinking filming this?
Yeah, like that was just unnecessary.
Like again, the whole movie is unnecessary, but this just like felt like another level. Like what? Like these scenes are just like, what purpose does this serve? And like I think he like just like gets flung by a catapult and dies. Like I think he doesn't even die in a satisfying way. Like there's no payoff for this. It's just like
Yeah.
this degenerate like running around hiding, and then you even get to see him
I
kind of,
think it would have just been better if the Rivertown people just killed him when they initially wanted to.
or they just banished him. Like I feel like if they just banished him, like you're the master left, go join him. That's your punishment. You're exiled, right? I mean, I know it's not. I guess you don't get these wacky scenes, but I feel like it's just a better end to his character. Like you get
Yeah,
exiled too.
yeah. You don't need him cross dressing in the middle of the final battle.
Yeah. Or they kept again like they gave him scenes like where he's the one that was like uh, giving Bilbo his bed and stuff. It's just or he's sucking up to Bard. It was like just stupid. Like there's no reason for that.
Yeah, but like
More
I didn't.
necessary stuff though.
Yeah, I didn't mind Azog's and Thorn's final fight. Um, I thought the every other fight going alongside that one was just dragged on.
But see, I almost prefer like if you mentioned for like it was just one big battlefield because when Thorn gets mortally wounded, his nephews get killed defending his body, which I think is more tragic. Like they kind of like die, like Thorin sees them die, then it's like, oh well, whatever. He's
Yeah.
still gonna kill fight. Like I feel been better like them defending their uncle. I guess they wouldn't have the relationship in the movie to kind of justify it, but I feel like it's a bit more tragic
I
that
mean,
way.
you could just had some of the dwarves. Like you could have had Keely and Feely die that. You could have had one of them die that way, defending his body. It's more to their characters. But
Plus, too, it's not
yeah,
as fantastical or crazy because that's probably something that would happen in a real war. Like, like
yeah.
the leader gets injured and you die, and you get killed trying to bring the body out of the fighting the front lines, trying to bring it to safety behind the lines.
Well, it was like when they showed Thorin fighting Azog and how he wounded him. He cut his hand off, and like you see the orcs pulling his body, like pulling him away from the fight to protect him.
Yeah, like that.
That
That's a better way of I think dealing with it than the schlock we got.
like they're using mountain goats, like giant mountain goats.
But the fact too, I think actually now that I mention it, I don't think Thorin even knew that Keely died, right? Because I mean, he dies. They both go into that tower. He sees Feely die, the blonde one. I don't think he knows that Keely dies because I think Bolg kills him. Then Bolg goes and fights Legolas. I don't think he ever knew his other nephew died.
Yeah. Well, we had to have that tender moment between him and his lover, Toriel.
Yeah, like they knew each other. Like they met for like what a few hours one day. She heals him, so what? They have like maybe 4 hours or 5 hours they knew each other, and this is like this tragic love story. I mean, Aragorn and Arwen's was like in development for almost decades, and then this they knew each
Yeah.
other for a few hours, and it's like supposed to feel bad. I don't feel bad
Also, I didn't. I kind of rolled my eyes. Uh,
because it was real.
those are the best kind.
Yeah,
But when Thandriel was speaking with her after the battle and Keely died and she's like crying and everything. Um, no, no, no. When he was talking with Legolas at the end of it all, not her. And then he mentions, Aragon. There's a ranger, like fine, and I'm like, oh.
yeah, because like
I
at
was
this
like, do you
point in the
really need
story,
that?
like I think Aragorn would be like he'd be like 20 something, right? Like I don't remember if he was the chieftain at the time, but like even if he was the chieftain, there's something inherently special about him at this point in time. He's just the chieftain of the Dunedain.
Yeah, I
Like
just thought that was
he
so unnecessary. Like,
oh,
oh,
it completely was. It felt like a Marvel thing where they're trying to set up a sequel or
yeah. I was like, I kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, come on.
yeah,
Like
like
you
at this
don't
point
you
there's
don't
nothing
you don't
special
need
about
that there.
Aragorn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, completely unnecessary. Because again, even the lore, like it doesn't make sense. Because again, Aragorn, there's nothing special about him at this point in time. He's just a chieftain. Like, why now? Like, why is he telling them to meet Aragorn now? Why not Aragorn's father or his grandfather? Right? I mean, there's nothing special about Aragorn at this point in time. Like, he wasn't going to reunite the two kingdoms.
Yeah. The,
Yeah.
the one fighting scene I did like was with Dandriel when he's riding into the town and his the moose he's riding picks up like four orcs with his antlers and he just one swipe cuts their heads clean off.
So again, the action schlock that some of that stuff was, I guess scenes like that were good. Like we mentioned for like the orc, but like, again, most of it was just bad. Like when the bard was trying to rally the men in Dale to fight, like it was so disorganized. Like most people are running without any armor, like the worst kinds of swords, charging orcs in full armor, and they're just like charging the lines that like no one's getting killed apparently. Like it's insanely stupid. I was like, this is like I know it's just a movie, but like I always feel like Lord of the Rings had some sort of realism because it's based off like historical fights and myths and legends. But this just felt like out of like some dumb like action movie where it just didn't feel like it belonged in the movie.
Or the scene where Bard like rides that like wagon all the way down to save his kids.
Oh yeah. Well, again, those like the schlock scenes that I guess they need to pad the runtime. Oh, his daughters are in danger. Oh no.
Uh, that part was just like, oh, rides a wagon. Now, why doesn't he just come running out of nowhere and save them? Why do you need to have him ride a wagon down the street?
Again, I guess Peter Jackson was out of ideas, or he was desperate for ideas. So it's like, hey, this could be cool, and just giant green screen the entire thing. We'll add everything in post.
Wait, and also, wait, didn't they have Azog and them, didn't they have like bats and stuff in the final fight? Like, remember Legolas?
Oh yeah, when he grabbed on a war bat to climb to the top of the tower.
Yeah, yeah,
Or no, was he like hanging upside down one of them too to like aim, and then he shot one in the head to land, or like
Ye-
all that schlock.
yeah.
Yeah.
At least in Lord of the Rings, like the fighting was more grounded. It's actually it's more like actual fighting skill.
Well, you see like
No,
armies and formation and stuff. I mean, you get some sort of like semblance of like a real historic, like ancient fight.
yeah, like Gimli using his axes. Like Aragorn
Or,
using.
or,
They're more skilled with actual weapons. It's not like I liked the dwarves fight. Being resourceful and stuff, but um,
Well, it wasn't even that. Like I'm talking about like how you saw like in the Return of the King, where you had like the orc armies, separated, and you had like the different
yeah,
like branches for different things. When people charge, they would get like this stick up and like make a pike to stop the people from charging. Like that's ancient battle techniques. I mean,
yeah, they're using catapults and battering rams to barge into the city, not an orc
yeah, because they're
with a
preparing for a
brick on its
siege.
head, and
Like
not
they're
an orc
sieging
with
the
a brick
city.
on its head. Yeah, or they're using wheelworms to tunnel through.
Yeah, like it just again, it felt like you're entering like a schlocky action movie where they don't think about any of that. Like that's what I guess the context of like Tolkien's works. Like, that's what stuff you like about it. Like I like it feels like it could be real. You like the Christian stuff with it, the historical stuff with it. Like it combines a lot of stuff that I like about it. And this just felt like nothing
Yeah,
with that. It could have been like a generic action movie, really.
yeah. You just see, you just see the Rock come flying in like the Hobbs and Shaw scene, just land on the army.
Sauron strong, not as strong as family.
The Rock beats Orc.
But I
Yeah,
guess after all this fighting schlock, I do like the ending after the fighting where you see Bilbo come home, just Lobelia trying to steal his stuff.
yeah. I did like Bilbo's goodbye to the dwarves. I
Yeah,
did
like
like
that
that.
too.
He was talking. He would come back and visit them. It was a nice, touching scene.
And he does in
Um,
the books, though. He does come back and visit them.
yeah. So I mean, like, it's just in this one there wasn't, I guess, as many redemptive moments
No, like this, like
to,
it's why I've seen the least. Like I can't really watch this.
and there was a lot of schlock at the end, a lot. At least like in the second one, I think it was more. It wasn't as much schlock as it was more just like long, boring, and filler scenes. But you still had more redemptive scenes to cover it up. This one did not have enough.
Because, like I mentioned before, like my favorite scenes are typically like what they pulled from the book. And the first one, for the most part, is the most accurate. And, like they each get least less accurate. That's probably why. I mean, not just the only reason why, but that's one of the reasons why I like the first one the most, and the second, and this one. Like they each are close to the book, and then they diverge more, and like they add like a bunch of unnecessary garbage that just, you know, make the movie like it just adds like nonsense, like the
I
love
did
scenes. It doesn't really bring anything to the movie, just
I
drags it
did
down.
for this one. One of the other scenes that I liked was Smog when he was destroying the lake town,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
he was taunting Bard. I did like that scene. Is
yeah,
that
yeah.
your boy?
I guess you could summarize my favorite scenes are like basically none of the Battle of the Five Armies. Like I like the build
Yeah,
up to it, and I like the aftermath. I hate the entire Battle of the Five
yeah,
Armies. Like there's like nothing redeeming about it.
yeah. He's taunting Bard. Is that your boy? You can't save him from the fire. Or he's like, what will you do now, Bowman? As he's like slowly walking up just to taunt him.
Yeah, just in destroying it.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened in the book, but I feel like it's entertaining enough where it's like, all right, I'll let it slide. I mean,
yeah,
considering how bad the rest of the movie is, I kind of let it slide.
yeah. But
Colin,
I
do
don't
you have
know.
anything to add?
Yeah, I was gonna
You're the
say
host.
Colin's been so
No,
quiet.
I don't have anything really to add. No,
Any thoughts on the whole trilogy?
a lot to be desired.
Yeah, because
That's
I
all
know
I
there's
can
a lot of
really
like,
say.
like a lot of like, there's a lot of fan edits out there trying to like re-edit this into something a little more watchable. Edit out like basic stuff we complained about. They try to edit out like none of the Toriel stuff, none of the Gandalf and the White Council stuff. But even then, like it's hard because like you can't get everything out. You're gonna have some stuff like even like when they're hunting down Smaug, you can't cut all that stuff out because there's some important dialogue scenes that you can't get rid of, like when he goes to destroy Lake Town.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's a
it's
mix.
Not as
yeah.
bad as everyone says it is, but
Yeah.
bad in some regards and some aspects.
Like I,
Overall, I enjoyed it. It's fun. It keeps you entertained enough, and like I said, there's enough redemptive moments that I can enjoy it. Um, and obviously the casting I liked. Um, but there's like you said, there's a lot to be desired with it. But for what it is, I enjoyed it.
especially more so the first. Like the first one, that's obviously my favorite. It's the one I will defend more.
Well,
But
because it didn't make it doesn't have that goofy nonsense in it too much. But
yeah, and again, like, there wasn't like a lot of padding as much as like, especially the third one is basically nothing but padding.
yeah,
Like I think the third one's like almost 2.5 hours, and it just drags. Like again, it's my least watched one because it just there's nothing to really watch. Just watch maybe the build up and then the aftermath. There's no reason to really watch the whole movie.
Watch the Smog's Desolation of the Lake Town, and you end it there.
Or when Bilbo goes home, because I like the ending
Yeah.
scene where it ties into Lord of the Rings, which I guess they wanted to do that, but like seeing him meet with Gandalf, you've seen Bilbo's perspective of that scene, but I guess
Yeah.
again, stuff, few things I liked in the third one.
I guess the biggest thing is you wonder what could have been had the production and everything had been followed through initially.
Yeah,
With two movies and Del Toro at the helm, you wonder like what could have been, but
I have a theory. I think even if
Christopher Grim.
Jackson had the extra time, it still probably would have been very messy because, as we talked about last week, he would just get these dumb ideas. He's like, "Let's just do this," and I feel like he probably would have more wiggle room and leverage to do that stuff because he did the trilogy. He's proven he's competent in some regards. The studio's like, oh yeah,
he's a
sure,
big
do
name
that.
now, so they're not
Yeah,
gonna
they're
tell him
like, yeah,
no.
yeah, sure, do that. So I feel like it still would have suffered from some of the
Yeah,
same stuff, even if he
I
had
agree.
yeah.
that extra 2 years to work on it.
I wonder like what Del Toro's vision would have been more than
Apparently,
Jackson's.
it was very different.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned at the beginning where he wanted, I guess, the first movie to cover most of The Hobbit, and the second movie would be like the wrap up to The Hobbit, and, like Lord of the Rings tie-in, whatever that means. I don't remember if they went into detail about that. It would have been
Yeah,
different. Yeah, very
yeah.
different.
Because Colin, I was thinking the same thing that
Oh my god.
he had a lot of pull, especially also because between after he finished the trilogy in this movie, he also did do the '05 King Kong, which was very successful as well. So he definitely probably had a lot more leeway. Too much, probably like George Lucas. Like you need someone to reel them in a bit.
Well, George is different because he is the boss. He at the time he owned Lucasfilm, so he could do whatever he wanted to. No one could touch him.
Yeah, I do always wonder. Like, I know we mentioned last week, like a faithful adaptation of Lord of the Rings, maybe as a TV show, because obviously I think remaking The Hobbit as a movie is just none of the actors you can't bring them back anymore, so there's no point in remaking it as a movie. But I feel like if they were to do like maybe like a one season TV show, like how we said Lord of the Rings, or faithful adaptation, that would be
Yeah,
nice.
down, 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 down.
Not a three
Down,
season
down.
TV show, just one.
Yes.
Yeah, like a mini series.
Again, I feel like that'd be fun. There's no reason to again drag it out again.
And if you and then they'll hire J.J. Abrams so they get the right amount of nostalgia in it.
Oh my God, that man should stop working on movies, but they keep hiring him.
I'd also like to see a Zack Snyder adaptation of Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God, could you imagine like Aragorn is like Christ on the on the cross?
They literally would crucify him.
Like they wouldn't call Gandalf, they call him like Jesus or something, or Yeshua. Being very subtle.
Gandalf Christ.
But you mentioned our boy
Christ.
JJ. Apparently, one of JJ's production companies is working on the Amazon Prime Lord of the Rings show, so we can't get rid of him. He keeps getting jobs in Hollywood. No one's stopping this man.
You know they're gonna try to do a different adaptation, but include as much nostalgia as possible. He
What can they possibly
can't
include
help
for
himself.
nostalgia? I mean, it's the first stage. Nothing like it's the
He'll
creation of the
find a
world.
way, Craig. He'll
No,
find a
actually, I
way.
take that back. It's the second age, but still, like, what could you call back to?
All right, let's reel it in. We're running a little bit out of time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, again, it's a mixed trilogy. If you're, I guess, only recommending it for, I guess, if you're a fan. Then again, you might be disappointed. So I don't know. Watch if you're curious. Then
It has its moments. I agree with Colin. It's like it's not necessarily as bad as people say. Obviously, when you measure it up to the other trilogy, it falls completely short. But if you look at it isolated, it's it's not a complete train wreck. It's messy, but it has its moments.
I agree. Could have been better. Should have been better, but you know.
we'll talk about a topic next week that Colin can contribute to.
Yeah, that's true. All right, that's been our episode. I'm Colin.
I'm Craig.
And I'm Daniel.
You know, Colin, you kind of like Del Toro, how you quit halfway to the podcast.